The triple-domed spires of Emberlight Academy shimmered beneath the artificial morning glow of the planet Ixia's orbital ring. These domes were made of a unique crystalline alloy, each tower standing at least 50 stories tall. Through the translucent outer walls, one could observe a kaleidoscope of alien silhouettes moving from class to class. Hundreds of years ago, Ixia had been a barren rock, but since joining the Galactic Union, the planet had been terraformed into a hub for advanced research, diplomacy, and most controversially, combat training. This particular branch, Emberlight Academy, was famed for its rigorous defense programs, which attracted recruits from every corner of the galaxy. On this morning, a cluster of new cadets stepped through the airlocked main gate, each wearing an insignia that gleamed with potential. Among them roamed the Iridian tall, four-armed humanoids with shimmering purple skin, whose multi-limbed dexterity made them deadlier than an armed turret. The Rumori avian-like beings with slender, wiry frames and hollow bones, capable of flight in low gravity and swift aerial maneuvers. The Dugar, thick-skinned bipeds known for their quadruple-lobed hearts and massive strength. They could crush steel beams in their bare hands. Amid this throng of superior physiologies walked a human Lieutenant Aiko Tan, looking decidedly ordinary at a mere 5A. Aiko's expression, however, was anything but ordinary. There was a calm assurance in her eyes, a subtle confidence that did not match her unassuming stature. Many of the arriving aliens barely took note of her. At least, not yet. By the time roll call began, rumors had already spread a human as our new combat instructor on certain stares, and hushed discussions followed Aiko as she walked to the primary training hall. She was used to it. Humans were still relative newcomers in the Union, and as a species lacking claws, venom, natural armor, or telepathic gifts, they remained a curiosity. They must be desperate. A Dugar recruit named Rex muttered to his companion, the Iridian called Talus, as they filed into the domed chamber. Humans can't withstand half the force we can dish out. Talus flexed all four arms, the patterned markings along his purple skin faintly glowing. Let's see if she's got anything to teach us. Can't imagine it's much. Just then, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The cadets turned to see Aiko standing at the center of the colossal training ring. Her posture was straight, hands clasped behind her back. The overhead lights accentuated the reflective panels of the hall, which were designed to simulate different environmental conditions during practice. Today, the lighting was mild, almost welcoming. Attention. Aiko's voice echoed across the dome, clear yet not overly loud. Within moments, the hall quieted. Over 200 recruits, from at least 12 different species, fixed their eyes on the human instructor. Aiko surveyed the room, noticing the varied attitudes in their faces: curiosity, doubt, a few smirks of overconfidence. She took a measured breath before speaking. Welcome to Advanced Defense and Combat Tactics, Level 9. My name is Lieutenant Aiko Tan, and yes, I'm human. A subtle wave of amusement rippled through the group. The overhead lights caught the metallic glint of Dugar tusks, the Iridian eyes reflecting shades of lavender, and the twitch of Rumori feathers. Some of you might think a human instructor is a mistake, Aiko continued, her tone firm but calm. You're free to hold that opinion. What I ask is that you give me and my methods a chance. Because once you see what we'll achieve together, you might reconsider how you measure strength. We'll see, rumbled Rex the Dugar. His voice alone reverberated like a hammer strike against an anvil. Aiko offered a faint smile, undeterred. She tapped a control panel on her wrist, and a large holo screen flickered to life above the dais. Images of various species flashed on the screen, including some that were present in the hall. Iridian, noted for their quadruple-limb fighting forms, exceptional dexterity, and a mild telekinetic ability limited to small objects. Rumori avian bipeds with partial flight capabilities, adept at speed-based tactics, especially in low gravity. Dugar, renowned for raw strength, dual lung systems, and near-impenetrable hide. Kairos mantis-like creatures who communicate via bioluminescent pulses, they had scythe-like appendages capable of slashing through starship plating. Humans' unremarkable physical attributes, but known for rapid adaptation, collaborative problem-solving, and high-stress innovation. Each species here has distinct advantages, Eiko said, gesturing at the images, but relying on these alone can be your downfall. Advanced combat is not about throwing your best punch, it's about understanding yourself, your team, and your enemy, then exploiting every gap. Without further ado, Eiko launched into an unexpected demonstration. She pointed to an area at the edge of the training hall where a series of advanced combat drones stood by, each one armed with plasma stunners and heavy alloy plating. We'll begin with a baseline assessment. Form squads of 3. Take down one drone together. Show me your natural approach before I give you any instruction. The crowd murmured, some excited, others dismissive. Before long, squads formed, Iridians pairing with Dugar, Rumori teaming with Kiros, forming groups that believed themselves unstoppable. The standard Federation training approach had always favored matching species with complementary traits. In less than a minute, the hall buzzed with the hum of rotating drone repulsors and the clang of energy shields. The newly formed teams attacked. A group of Iridians unleashed a flurry of 4-limbed strikes, attempting to overwhelm the drone's shields with volume. 2 Dugar and a Rumori tried a head-on assault, the Dugar punching with sledgehammer force while the Rumori dive-bombed from above. A trio of Kairos deployed their scything limbs in a mesmerizing synchronized assault, luminous pulses flickering with each motion. Yet the Academy's drones were no pushovers. Their AI adapted to the cadence of each team's approach, deflecting or evading attacks. The fight wasn't easy. Yells, clangs, and plasma bursts filled the air. It took about 5 minutes for most squads to succeed. Some drones were battered into sparking ruin, others forced the squads into elaborate maneuvers to corner them. Each success was met with varied degrees of panting, chest-heaving exhaustion even for those with near-superhuman physiology. When the last drone fell, the recruits gathered around Eiko again, trying not to look too winded. Rex, the Dugar, stood near the front, arms crossed, sweat glistening on his tusked face. Talus the Iridian flexed all 4 arms, rolling his shoulders in an attempt to mask his fatigue. Well done, Eiko said, tapping on her wrist console. You handled the drones effectively using your known abilities. But I noted your technique. There were gaps, obvious ones. A round of disgruntled murmurs arose, especially from the Dugar, who prided themselves on direct confrontation. A lanky Rumori in the back, named Lesh, blinked rapidly. Gaps? We succeeded. Yes, you did, Eiko conceded. But take the Dugar Rumori squad. You hammered the drone's front shield, leaving the Rumori exposed to flanking fire. If that drone had advanced AI, Lesh here would be unconscious. Lesh clicked his tongue in uneasy agreement. A few uneasy glances passed around the group. Rex's broad shoulders tensed. We handled it. The drones destroyed. Eiko nodded slowly. Good enough for a routine training exercise, maybe. But real combat is rarely that forgiving. If your mistakes get you or your squad mates killed, success is meaningless. The tension in the hall thickened. Some recruits bristled at her bluntness. Others, like a newly curious Kiros named Sishi, leaned forward, a glint of interest in their compound eyes. A particularly tall Iridian named Ithar stepped forward, voice resonating with a slight telekinetic hum. Commander Tan, if you believe we're so flawed, perhaps you should show us how a mere human might fare. A wave of murmured assent rippled through the crowd. Eiko arched an eyebrow, observing the hunger in Ithar's eyes. She spotted Kartha Tersai-like figure from another story's memory was absent, but here, Ithar and Talus filled the role of the skeptical powerhouses. A demonstration, Eiko repeated. I have no intention of making this about me. My job is to teach you to fight smarter, not prove I'm physically stronger. Ithar folded his forearms, a derisive smirk crossing his face. You can't, can you? You know we'd crush you in a direct contest. A tense hush settled. Some recruits looked uncomfortable at Ithar's open challenge. A few, however, seemed eager for a confrontation. Eiko slowly exhaled, eyes unwavering. You might be right, Ithar, but let me ask, is direct contest always the wisest path? Ithar opened his mouth to retort, but Eiko quickly turned away, gesturing for everyone to follow. Let's move on. We have an entire curriculum to cover, and maybe, Ithar, you'll have your demonstration when the time is right. Inside a smaller adjacent hall, holographic projectors came to life, displaying scenes of ancient human warfare. Swords clashing, trenches in old Earth wars, advanced mechs from the lunar rebellions, each era showcasing humans improvising, adapting, and overcoming. Humans evolved on a planet where we weren't always top predators, Eiko explained, stepping through the holographic displays. We lacked claws, venom, speed, or flight. To compensate, we developed weapons, strategy, synergy. Over centuries, we refined thousands of martial arts, each focusing on technique, resourcefulness, or leveraging an opponent's own strength against them. She paused to let the images of old samurai, Mongolian horse archers, Spartan phalanxes, and orbital paratroopers sink in. Because we had to. Every obstacle forced us to adapt. That's the legacy I bring here. Your natural gifts are remarkable, but if you rely solely on them, you risk being outmaneuvered by anyone who studies your weaknesses. At these words, the murmurs transformed. Some recruits now wore thoughtful frowns. A Kairos cadet raised a scythe-like arm. Kairos rely on speed. We can slice through armor that even Dugar fists can't dent. Why should we do anything else? Eiko smiled softly. What happens when you face an opponent who's faster than you, or who can counter your slicing arcs? Remember, the best warriors always have a plan B. For the next segment, Eiko lined up volunteers for a more hands-on demonstration. Among them was a Dugar named Rash, smaller than Hrex but still towering over Eiko by at least 2 feet. Rash, come at me with a standard overhead strike, Eiko instructed, picking up a simple polymer staff with no enhancements. Rash bared his tusks and swung a massive arm downward, enough force behind it to crack concrete. But Eiko sidestepped just a hair's breadth out of reach. In one smooth motion, she tapped her staff twice against the underside of his bicep, then flicked it against his knee. Rash yelped, his leg buckling. Though not fully collapsed, he clutched at his arm and stared at her in disbelief. What? I felt a strange shock. Eiko nodded. Dugar physiology has nerve clusters near the triceps that react violently to targeted strikes. A direct hit can disrupt muscular control briefly. A hushed awe settled. Even Ithar's confident expression faltered slightly. Eiko turned to the class. This is an example of knowledge over brute force. You don't have to outrun or outpunch a Dugar if you can exploit their weaknesses. While many cadets marveled at the demonstration, some grew resentful. Ithar whispered to Talus, she's just using cheap tricks. Anyone can learn to jab nerve clusters. Talus, though still prideful, had begun to see the potential. Cheap or not, it's effective. We can do more with 4 arms if we integrate those strikes into our form. Ithar scoffed but said nothing further, his eyes narrowing at Eiko. In that glare, one could sense more to come. Eiko divided the recruits into species-based squads to practice scenario-based drills. Each squad received data on a hypothetical enemy, a race known as the Varalai, famed for telepathic illusions and advanced shielding. The squads had to devise a plan using minimal resources. The Iridian squad attempted brute force, focusing on breaking the Varalai shields through a barrage of telekinetic projectiles. The Rumori flight team planned a high-speed infiltration, thinking they could outrun illusions. The Dugar cadre proposed a head-on assault to shatter illusions with unstoppable might. Eiko watched them intently, taking notes on a sleek tablet. After an hour of heated group strategy sessions, she reconvened everyone to share results. Predictably, each squad's approach had glaring oversights. The illusions would cause friendly fire, or the advanced shielding would hold long enough for the Varolai to counter. A few cadets appeared frustrated at the complexity. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Eiko said. "You're still relying on the assumption that your best attribute will always carry the day. Our next drills will teach you to adapt in the face of unpredictability." Ithar had grown visibly impatient. He stepped forward, towering over the human instructor, a flicker of challenge in his golden eyes. "You say we rely on brute force. Show me something that isn't." "A parlor trick." Eiko's lips pressed together thoughtfully. Around them, cadets started forming a circle, sensing a confrontation. Rex, Talus, and others watched with rapt attention. The silence crackled with anticipation. "Are you asking for a duel?" Eiko asked softly. Ithar shrugged all four shoulders. "You could call it that. Let's see if your human combat teachings hold up against a real Iridian fighter." Eiko glanced around at the cadets, reading the mood. They wanted a demonstration, some out of curiosity, others out of skepticism. She inhaled once, deeply. "Very well. Standard Federation sparring rules. First to be incapacitated or yield is the loser." "Agreed." Ithar nodded, setting himself in a wide stance, all four arms at the ready. His telekinetic aura flickered as he mentally tested the air, searching for a strategic advantage. Eiko set her data tablet aside and picked up the same unenhanced staff from earlier. Ithar cracked his neck, grinning with confidence. With an Iridian's multi-armed approach, it was nearly impossible to predict where the next blow would come from. "You can make the first move," Eiko offered. Ithar lunged with two arms, feinting high, while a third arm shot forward in a mid-level jab. His fourth hand hovered, likely preparing to catch Eiko if she dodged incorrectly. This layered attack was a signature Iridian tactic, designed to corner an opponent from multiple angles. But Eiko wasn't there. At the last moment, she dipped under Ithar's high arms, pivoted on one foot, and deflected the mid-level jab with the staff. In the same fluid breath, she sidestepped the waiting fourth arm. Ithar's strikes whiffed past her, throwing him off balance. Before he could regain footing, she tapped his side with the staff lightly, but precisely, right at a known nerve cluster near the ribs that Iridians rarely guarded. Ithar hissed, stumbling a step. A few spectators gasped. Eyes blazing, Ithar unleashed a flurry of blows. His four arms blurred in a furious assault, telekinetic waves rippling outward to try and trap Eiko. But she seemed to sense every shift. She twisted away from the invisible force, responding with minimal but surgical staff strikes, taps to Ithar's elbows, wrists, and shoulders. 3, 4, 5, Eiko counted under her breath, each number coinciding with a point of contact. Ithar's arms started trembling, as if unsure where to aim next. Out of desperation, Ithar roared, throwing all his mass into a final, sweeping blow meant to knock Eiko clean off her feet. The corridor of watchers collectively inhaled, but Eiko dropped to a half-crouch, letting the staff guide Ithar's momentum away, while her left foot kicked out lightly, hooking his heel. In an instant, Ithar toppled forward, landing face first on the training floor. He tried to push himself up, but his arms wouldn't respond properly. A hush fell, thicker than any fog. Eiko stood over Ithar, staff held loosely at her side. "You'll be fine in a few minutes. The nerve disruption is temporary." Ithar's eyes burned with equal parts anger and disbelief. He struggled to move, but could only twitch. Meanwhile, stunned cadets looked on, some with admiration, others with unease. Rex and Talus exchanged wide-eyed glances. Eiko set the staff aside and knelt by the fallen Iridian. Your multi-limb approach is powerful but predictable if you rely on it for every situation. Sometimes a well-placed pressure strike trumps all the brute force in the galaxy. No one spoke as Ithar was helped to a medical station by a pair of concerned Iridians. The tension in the hall broke only when Eiko gently cleared her throat. That demonstration wasn't about humiliating Ithar. It was about illustrating that knowledge combined with practice can surpass raw advantage. I spent weeks studying Iridian physiology. I used your strengths against you. With Ithar's defeat, the atmosphere underwent a profound change. Many cadets began looking at Eiko with genuine respect. The ones who'd been confident in their inborn gifts now wore expressions of cautious curiosity, recognizing how vulnerable they might be to a cunning opponent. A Brimori, a slender empath named Ziri, tentatively raised a hand. Instructor, might you show us how to adapt our own talents to some of these techniques? Eiko nodded. That is exactly what we'll do next. Over the ensuing days, the training hall transformed into a workshop of collaborative tactics. Eiko paired species that usually wouldn't work together, Iridians with Kairos, Dugar with Rumori, ensuring that each side learned from the other's strengths and weaknesses. She introduced them to pressure points, subtle misdirections, team-based formations, and stress simulations. Some recruits struggled, especially those who were used to straightforward power. Others, like the Kiro Scythe wielder Sishi, took to the new methods eagerly, combining fluid footwork with hypnotic luminescent pulses. Rex initially resisted, but after watching how easily Eiko's nerve strikes could topple bigger foes, he grudgingly began practicing subtler maneuvers. Talus, too, integrated staff-based joint locks into his forearm fighting style. Each day, Eiko introduced new challenges. Low-light simulations that forced them to rely on hearing, smell, or telepathy. Zero-G environments where flight-capable species had to learn to fight upside down, and ground-bound cadets had to orient themselves with grappling lines or anchor moves. Distraction drills featuring illusions, sirens, and even holographic crowd noises to test mental resilience. The recruits, once skeptical, now dived into these lessons with an almost frantic determination. Defeating a human in a spar was no longer the main priority. They wanted to outdo themselves, to refine their potential beyond mere raw attributes. Midway through training, a momentous breakthrough occurred. A multi-species squad of Dugar, Rumori, and Iridians managed to defeat 3 advanced drones simultaneously by combining their varied strengths. The Rumori, Lesh, executed high-speed aerial fights, drawing the drone's fire. The Dugar, Rex, used measured bursts of brute force guided by cunning footwork taught by Eiko to corner the drones. The Iridian, Talus, performed nerve strike techniques adapted from human martial arts, destabilizing the drone's core processing modules. The synergy was flawless, ending in a triumphant victory with minimal damage taken. Eiko applauded from the sidelines. That's it, she said, eyes shining. This is what the Federation wanted from you all along, true, integrated combat strategy. Nearby, Ziri the Brimori telepath gently broadcast a wave of excitement that rippled through the hall. For the first time, recruits of different species genuinely celebrated one another's achievements instead of competing for alpha status. Rumors soon circulated that the Galactic Union's top brass would attend the final demonstration. Emberlight Academy's staff, including senior instructors from other programs, had expressed both skepticism and intrigue about a human-led advanced tactics class. Many wondered if these recruits truly had anything revolutionary to show. Eiko's presence in the academy had stirred controversy. Some believed humans still had no place lecturing species far mightier in raw potential. Others argued that humans' creative adaptability might unlock unprecedented synergy. Under this looming spotlight, the cadets redoubled their efforts. A few late-night sessions found them practicing complicated group maneuvers or studying 3D diagrams of each other's physiologies to perfect pressure strikes, feints, and energy manipulations. On the morning of the final demonstration, the grandstands around the central dome brimmed with Union dignitaries and Academy officials. Even a few leading generals from the Galactic Defense Armada had arrived, curious to see how the experiment panned out. A hush fell over the spectators as the massive dome lights dimmed. Lieutenant Aiko Tan stepped into a small halo of light at the center of the arena. She wore a simple training uniform, no ornate armor or advanced gear, and carried her signature polymer staff. Esteemed guests and fellow instructors. She began, voice amplified through the acoustics. You're here to witness the culmination of 9 weeks of rigorous training. Before we begin, let me remind you this is not about showing off. It's about demonstrating new tactics, ones that emphasize adaptability, synergy, and knowledge. She cast a warm look toward her assembled recruits, each standing in squads of 4 or 5. Some had integrated specialized gear, others brandished conventional arms. All radiated a confidence that belied their varied backgrounds. Cadets Aiko nodded. The floor is yours. Squad 1, a combination of Dugar and Rumori, with a single Iridian acting as coordinator. They simulated a scenario where they had to infiltrate a fortress ringed by automated turrets. Dugar Rex led the charge, smashing barriers at carefully timed intervals while Rumori Lesh performed aerial distractions, forcing turrets to swivel. The Iridian, Talus, used mid-range telekinetic bursts to jam turret servos momentarily. The synergy was seamless, each species compensating for the other's vulnerabilities. Squad 2 featuring Kairos along with a Brimori telepath, Ziri. The Kairos performed a mesmerizing pattern of scythe slices and luminescent pulses, while Ziri broadcast subtle mental illusions to the enemy drones, causing them to target false positions. At crucial moments, Ziri would also feed strategic intentions across the squad telepathically. Their synergy turned what would normally be a chaotic fight into a precision ballet of slicing arcs and misdirection. Squad 3, an all-Iridian group once led by Ithar, who now included some nerve strike techniques in their repertoire. Though Ithar still maintained a formidable physical presence, each member had learned to coordinate telekinetic flurries with pinpoint staff or baton strikes. This group overcame advanced drones designed to simulate heavily shielded enemies. Observers watched, mouth agape, as the Iridians exploited small shield gaps exactly as humans might rather than just pummeling head-on. Each squad overcame unique challenges set up by the Academy, moving obstacles, energy net traps, illusions, and multi-front assaults. The final portion saw multiple squads operating in tandem to take down a powerful, fully adaptive megadrone that was rumored to surpass normal training boundaries. It took them a carefully orchestrated sequence spearheaded by Aiko's behind-the-scenes guidance, but they succeeded in cornering and disabling the megadrone. The entire demonstration ended in an uproar of cheers from the stands. Dignitaries exchanged impressed nods, some furiously typing notes into their data tablets. With the final demonstration complete, Aiko stepped back into the central light, signaling for silence. The applause gradually subsided, replaced by an air of expectancy. "You've witnessed the results," she said, voice steady, "of an experiment in collaboration. Every species here is exceptional in its own right. But together, by combining knowledge, analyzing vulnerabilities, and practicing synergy, you've become more formidable than you ever were alone." She turned her gaze to the recruits, who stood around her in semicircles, chests heaving with exertion, eyes shining with pride. When these cadets arrived, many believed human tactics were trivial. But humans have survived and thrived not by brute force, but by adapting to each new threat. We tested ideas gleaned from Earth's diverse martial histories, blending them with the natural gifts of your species. Today, you showed what that looks like in action. The dome lights rose, revealing the assembled Federation officials. A decorated general with glimmering epaulettes stepped forward, voice resonating. Lieutenant Aiko Tan, cadets, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I extend our congratulations. You've demonstrated a new paradigm for interspecies combat training. We look forward to applying these methods across the galaxy's defense corps. Another round of applause erupted, louder than before. Some recruits who had been staunch critics bowed their heads in gratitude, acknowledging Aiko's guidance. As the crowd dispersed, many came forward to congratulate the squads. The Academy's senior instructors, who had doubted Aiko, now eyed her with renewed respect. Rex patted her on the shoulder, nearly knocking her off balance with his massive hand. "You taught me that smashing walls isn't enough," he said with an awkward grin. "I'll never forget it." Ziri the Brimori simply nodded, broadcasting a gentle wave of gratitude that Aiko felt as a warm rush of affirmation in her mind. Talus, all four arms relaxed, offered a small salute. "Humans," he said, "you're full of surprises." Aiko allowed herself a faint, genuine smile. "I still have plenty to learn too, believe me. Always will. That's the real secret of humanity. We never stop adapting. We're seeking new ways to improve." Under the radiant glow of Emberlight Academy's triple domes, the cadets and their instructor parted ways. Some boarded shuttles to advanced postings, others stayed to continue specialized training. Aiko stood at the edge of the docking bay, watching them depart. Her reflection glimmered in the shuttle windows, a small human, overshadowed by towering forms. And yet, she felt no inferiority, only a sense of purpose fulfilled. These recruits would return to their homeworlds and share what they had learned, sparking new ideas and forging better alliances. The galaxy was vast, filled with predators, cosmic anomalies, and potential wars brewing in distant sectors. But perhaps if more academies adopted these collaborative methods, those threats would find themselves up against a united front, an interlinked tapestry of species who had learned to combine strengths and cover weaknesses as one cohesive force. And so, as the final shuttle soared away into the rose-tinted skies of Ixia, Lieutenant Aiko Tan turned on her heel, ready to prepare the next class. Each new group would bring its own challenges, its own doubts, and its own potential. That, after all, was the heart of HFY. No matter where you come from or how small you seem, you can always find a way to stand tall among giants if you learn and adapt together.